use cases of Web3 through DePIN.
Spheron directly connects GPU providers with developers and business in the need of powerful on-demand compute. Enjoy the best-in-class pricing and uninterrupted uptime on a network that is dynamic, scalable, and ready for tomorrow. Hello everyone, Daniel from DePIN Hub here, and today we are interviewing Maria, CEO and co-founder of Weaver Labs, a company revolutionizing the telecommunication industry through innovative solutions and decentralized infrastructure. Weaver Labs is dedicated to making connectivity more accessible and efficient. Let's dive into the conversation and learn more about what they're trying to do. Well, thanks so much for joining the podcast, Maria. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's get started by you introducing yourself, your background, and your role at Weaver Labs.
Maria here. I'm a PhD in telecoms, and my background before starting this was academia. I was a researcher at the innovation lab, and honestly, my path was over there, kind of like university and research and making cool things happen with very little money, which sounds like a startup. In some shape or form. So at the university lab, I was doing a lot of research around 5G. And at the beginning, the big question was like, why do we need 5G? Why do we actually need another generation? The 4G phones, everybody thank God Apple came up with the iPhone so that we actually could leverage the power of 4G with video calls and stuff. So kind of like the consumer was, we don't really need 5G. Who actually needs 5G? So we worked in loads of cool different projects, bringing connectivity into businesses. We used to call them the verticals because telecoms is kind of horizontal and sits across all of the industries. So it was super cool because we were doing things like transmitting the sense of touch over the internet or kinesthetic with robots doing teleoperation. Before we didn't call it the metaverse, but it was a VR or mixed reality world in gaming. And also we call it the industrial type of VR where you would use Unity-based scenarios to fix, parts of tools of an airplane, for instance, or to educate students on some very complex process. We also brought 5G to the theaters, right? So all of that, my role was basically to make innovation happen using telecoms, and how could all of these businesses actually leverage the power of networks. And I quickly understood that the task of building these networks was not going to be from your the service provider that you buy the SIM cards, because these networks are very, very specialized and they require very specific type of software configurations and machines and stuff. And that's how we came about, creating Weaver Labs. It's leveraging the advancements of technology and obviously solving a commercial issue that exists in the industry. So my role here is a little bit of everything. I think I am an architect at heart, so I do love going to customers, understanding their problems and coming up with a solution for them. So I do that a lot. I'm very close to the ecosystem, but I also have, obviously, as a CEO, I need to run the business in terms of, operations, human resources, finance, and all of the boring stuff. But I do have a lot of fun understanding the customer's problems and trying to find a solution to it.
Yeah, basically XEO, right? Like you can do everything, you use multiple hats. And yeah, I completely agree with you. A lot of people, when they talk about, okay, what's up with this 5G network, it's a very, very different technology. Like it has like much more bigger bandwidth, but then you need more antennas because, the wavelength is the frequency is so high that the distance, it's much shorter comparing to 4G. And yeah, I also understand the side of a lot of people when they think, okay, I don't need actually more than 4G on my phone. I can do my daily tasks. I can watch YouTube. I can talk to my mom, etc. Right? There's no problem. And I like this idea of okay, now let's stop. Let's think outside the box. Because if you have this technology, there's a lot of things that should unlock, but you do need to think about outside the box. Like let's find new opportunities, new capabilities like in cars and, VR. I think in the VR space, it's going to have a lot of things that are going to require a lot of processing, a lot of bandwidth as well, right? Yeah, it's very interesting that someone like you has been tackling out these worlds basically, and how can you translate that then into creating Weaver Labs? What is the mission? What is the vision of the project?
As you may know, most of the telecoms infrastructure that exists in the planet is built by a very little amount of players, right? We have a total of 600 mobile network operators in the planet, which is very, very little. That amounts like 3-4 per country. And in general, they own most of the telco infrastructure. In terms of fiber networks, it's a lot more diverse. There are a lot more fiber network providers. And I'm sure you in Portugal or us in London, we can relate to that. You can buy broadband connectivity from a lot more than you can buy your mobile network. But in general, mobile network has this universal connectivity, which is far from being universal. And it has the ability to reach, right? Because of it's wireless. So when we started working with all of these use cases and going, to stadiums, shopping malls, concert arenas, even rural areas, or even city centers, we could see how networks were being built where only there was a commercial, it was driven commercially to the mobile network operators with a return on investment because of the end consumer, right? So there were a lot of use cases that were not being served, and therefore innovation was being completely paused in those industries just because of access to connectivity. So that was because there is an infrastructure investment problem, right? These companies need to go to their parent companies and say, hey, we need to invest in a whole new generation. And as you well said, now the network is a lot more dense. We need to put more antennas, where before we used to put one, now we need to put 3. So it's expensive, right? So the idea of Weaver Labs is to allow for more infrastructure owners, so other players, to go and build their telco infrastructure, and then offer that infrastructure to be serviced by your traditional service providers. And so they don't have to go and build the infrastructure, and they can just use it as a service. So very similarly, what AWS did for the traditional data center, right? They before we used to all host our applications at home, right? And now no one thinks about that. You just go, you rent some, storage and compute from them, and you just use that hyperscaler type of model. So this is the same, but for telco infrastructure in kind of like a network of networks approach. So CellStack, which is our product, sits on top of all of this Telco Cloud infrastructure, interconnects it, and allows it to be consumed as a service.
No, that's super interesting. We've been seeing, like, especially in the US, right? Like projects like, I don't know if you know Helium Mobile. There's like XNet that we interviewed a couple episodes ago. There's a lot of cool things happening in the telco world where people like trying to build this in some sort of infrastructure. And also I saw on the website that you have like you're building like tooling software that can help like improve the efficiency and manage those networks. Would people then also buy the antennas and deploy them, and then using your software integrate them with like a Vodafone of the world? How does the decentralization infrastructure work, and how can you differentiate it from like a regular telecom that exists nowadays?
So our target customer is obviously a large infrastructure owner. So they're called neutral hosts or infrastructure, wireless infrastructure providers. And they're your Airbnb of networks, right? They literally just build networks to rent them to mobile network operators, service providers, or sometimes even the end customer, that end customer being a smart city application, or some sort of B2B relationship that can happen in a venue, for instance, in a stadium, right? So our customer is that infrastructure owner that buys the infrastructure and is eager to make money out of it, right? And what our software gives them is the ability to integrate to other networks that exist, so that service providers can provide this service, the continuous service across infrastructure that is owned by different players. But also the ability to integrate multiple users on top of that infrastructure. And that is really, really important, because that is what creates the business case for the investment in telecoms, right? One use case is usually not enough. You need to have multiple users on that infrastructure to actually make the investment case. So our software allows to create tenancies, and having multiple tenants on that infrastructure, allowing to generate new revenues out of that infrastructure. So we are not like, Helium, that we expect, you or I to buy an antenna and put a 5G network out of our ADSL connection at home, or, or out of our window. We work with a telco ecosystem who is already invested in building this telecoms infrastructure, and use our software to allow them to interconnect to the others. So the decentralization component is about the infrastructure sharing model, and how can you leverage blockchain to govern all of these access to infrastructure, and also how can you leverage blockchain to allow to prove which resources have been placed in the network and which ones have been actually used or not. So traditionally in the telecoms world, we have what we call the service level agreement. You have it, I have it, everyone has it. If you have a contract with any carrier, you have it. And typically there is a chain of service level agreements that goes down to the bare, cable provider that goes down there. So what decentralization allows you to do is break those pieces down into that level of ownership and say, well, you own your stuff, I own my stuff. And then if consensus agrees that we both have to deliver what we are going to deliver, then there you go, computer program executes a payment. So essentially, we are leveraging blockchain or these tools in order to automate a process that it's already in place. We're not reinventing the wheel to that.
Just making it more efficient, right, in a way, and then make it, and at the level, the extra level of security or accountability for those we call it WISPs, like wireless internet service providers, or like, I don't know if that's the right name to use it. Okay, so let's say I want to make money. I'm going to deploy, like hundreds of those devices around the stadiums in my city because there's coverage is really bad. How was the process of like, okay, I want to do this. What do I need to do as Daniel to start deploying and working with you guys into like integrate, through with Vodafone, or I don't know what is the connection between trying to deploy this network and someone using my antenna to the backbone level, basically?
Yeah, so initially we are working directly with the users of you, Daniel, right? So for instance, you you want to promote public sector use cases, right? Improve the productivity of the city, and you want to equip the city with sensors. So that level of reselling of connectivity is the one that we are working on right now, and also with the venues and their own end customers. The idea, obviously, is to go into that the MNOs rent this infrastructure as a service once they realize they actually have a problem. If they do, ever. If not, they're just new providers are going to come on top and service on top of that infrastructure. That I know that's going to happen for a fact. We're going to go from 4 to maybe hundreds of providers over shared infrastructure. So you, as Daniel, you see an opportunity and you say, okay, so I'm going to invest in this telco infrastructure. I'm going to use CellStack to monetize this infrastructure. And you can start selling this connectivity to the end users. That can be either the sensors, or if you are the owner of a stadium, the fans that come into the stadium, or even the broadcasters, any user of connectivity. And then if you want to act as a neutral host, then you can also sell that capacity to a mobile network operator, and they would have no problem integrating into your network because CellStack is completely compatible with ETSI, which is one of the most prominent standards for orchestration, and we follow that. So and obviously it would be like 3GPP standard as well, which is the main standard for wireless communications, mobile wireless communication. So all of that would make it very easy to interconnect.
Nice. Oh, that's brilliant. And when was the idea of like integrating some sort of blockchain or crypto? When that happened, and how does a token necessarily? Because you mentioned like, okay, this is going to be used for the verification of the nodes are doing what they should be doing, right? But then how was the process of getting to this point? And how were you thinking, in which chain you're thinking of building, or Solana, Ethereum, or your own? How is that came to be, let's say?
The journey is being interesting. And obviously, starting something so big from scratch, it takes time. Also, we're largely bootstrapped, so it takes a lot of investment as well. Most of our money comes from customers paying for trials and getting, we have a lot of funding from the UK government as well, investing in our product development. So we had to start from the ground up and starting with the bare orchestration software. So connecting to the telco infrastructure, being able to manage it, deploy those network functions and create all of that before we move into a decentralized service layer, which is essentially what it is, what Cellnet is. So the idea, I'm not going to take credit for it because I had no idea what blockchain was until 2017. So I'm going to say that it was before the boom of the ICOs, but not very far. So my co-founder Anthony, who was working with me in the lab at that time, he's a software developer and joined us to work on API integration. And he was like, "Have you heard about this thing about Bitcoin? Go and read the white paper." And I'm a geek, so I really got interested in the technology behind it, right? The fact that, it's a database on steroids and that you can actually prove that these things happened. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then, yeah, he was literally just like luring me into that world. As in, like, every day we would chat about it. And then I was very much in my centralized way of thinking, so I could not get my head around it. It was really hard. But a lot of whiteboard sessions and the willingness to do something all together. So with my other co-founder Alex as well. So we got this off the ground, and we were very lucky as well that the industry was shifting towards that space, with everything being based in software, with the cloud transformation happening in the industry, and 5G decoupling the software and hardware. Because this wouldn't have been possible if the industry hadn't done the bet towards open networks. So then I became an advocate of open networks and open RAN and open ecosystems. And obviously that also follows a lot the narrative of the UK government and policy in this country of openness and interoperability. So that resonated really well. And that's how it took kind of off. And we've been quite lucky in terms of, winning projects or getting the support of the Department for Science in the UK.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. What do you see the main utility of the token? How does the token accrue value, and what kind of chain are you guys thinking of building on top of?
Our token now is launched in the Ethereum network, and our first trials are going to be running there. With our first marketplace is going to be running there, but we're going to be migrating into our own chain that it's essentially a general telecommunications platform with different proofs of the resources that exist in the network, and then in terms of a Dino is a way to exchange the value in the network. So the flow of a Dino is you put resources in the network and you earn a Dino because you're putting resources in the network and someone else is using them, essentially, right? And then our customers essentially pay their bills in pounds or whatever fiat currency they have. So they need to exit the ecosystem. And then there is obviously a process to do that. And then in terms of recurring value, for us is the network usage. 91% of our network is mining. It's not, we have zero discretion on how these tokens are generated or how many tokens exist in the market. It's just network usage. So if you accrue users in the network, you're going to have more tokens in circulation, and it's the whole demand story that classic economies play, right? We didn't do a full token launch as some projects do. We did a very, very thorough state-of-the-art study where we could see how some of the most important and successful projects, even from back in the day, like Filecoin, have done a very similar approach to most of the allocation given to mining. And then the rest is just to bootstrap the network. So we took the same approach. And we have seen how that approach the community has really liked it as well, right? Because they have adopted users. So Adina follows the approach of most infrastructure projects.
Spherion lets you unlock the full potential of decentralized compute, whether you are a user or provider. Enjoy instant access to on-demand compute so you can scale your most powerful applications, or turn your idle GPUs into passive profits in just a few easy clicks, whether you've got a premium server or personal laptop. Spherion users enjoy frictionless onboarding, intelligence matchmaking, and real-time monitoring and analytics as you type in the world's most user-friendly, cost-effective DePIN computer exchange on the market. Welcome to Spherion, the infinite computer network. Nice. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. One thing that I really like about DePIN in general is like it's very clear to see how we have dollars coming to the network, right? You're actually building like something that people understand, people utilize, not just DeFi for the sake of DeFi that we were talking before the podcast. I think that's like one thing that's like really excites me is that you can see really value being generated to the network, really real money coming to the network. How long have you guys been working on the Weaver Labs project?
So we incorporated in 2019. So it's been some time. And I can tell you that, so the beginning was, you're crazy. What the hell are we talking about? All of that narrative of like, that's not going to happen ever. And now we are this was the first year that I was in Mobile World Congress. And I think 99.9% of the people who came to our stand were like, wow, guys, this is cool. We really need this. So it's just hang there, it's going to happen. It's actually going to happen. Infrastructure sharing, it's going to happen. And we took an approach that I think it was a survival type of approach, but it's also been quite good for us because it's build a good brand within the telco ecosystem, build a brand that people trust. And then now when we talk about blockchain and tokens, they're not just going to be like, oh, these guys, they don't know anything. No. We know what we're talking about and we've delivered, And the fact that we're bringing this technology here is because we understand that it's a technology that can solve a problem. We're not just showing it in as in like, oh, we want to do tokens. No. It solves a problem and it's very clear.
Yes, exactly. I think one thing that was quite surprising to me, I didn't go to the Mobile World Congress this year. I was there last year and I was in a panel and I was talking about like, okay, there's a lot of people. I was at the startup side of the event. We had a booth. And then when I was doing the talk and I was like, okay, the hands up, who here knows Helium? And there was like 3 people that put their hands up. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, okay, wait, that means we have a lot of work to do. A lot of times when you talk about decentralized infrastructure, the name Helium comes a lot, right? Because they kind of like managed to bootstrap a network of 1 million nodes in a few years. There was like kind of like a success story in a way to really make this idea of like a decentralized network to their people actually deploy the CapEx and OpEx, etc. And then means like a lot of people don't know DePIN yet. So that's why we have here the podcast. We have the DePIN Hub website. They're trying to bring a lot of people. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, right? For really trying to spread the word of DePIN and everything that we're doing.
So Mobile World Congress is not really helping any of this in the sense that they put the startup at the very end. How many miles did you have to walk to get over there? Crazy, right? It's like you have to go through this very, very dark corridor. And then at the very end in Hall 8, for the listeners, this is the biggest show that exists probably in the planet, close to CES. 120,000 people from every corner of the planet, ministers, like politicians, everyone is there. And they put the most innovative people at the very, very end there. And then the other thing that I think, if you would have asked that question in the conference floor of Mobile World Congress, you would have gotten a lot of hands up. The problem is that the startups that they are bringing are startups that sit on the application layer. They are health tech, they are, VR, they are all that stuff that use connectivity, but they are not the guys building the infrastructure. Because the innovation in the infrastructure, A, is boring, B, lacks investment, and C, it's controlled by large players. So there are very few companies that actually take the challenge of coming and innovating in the infrastructure space. So we're not a lot, and it's great that DePIN exists now, and there is a name and a brand behind it, because we can actually now say, well, there is this community of innovators that it's actually trying to disrupt this industry from the ground up. And obviously, we have to do a lot of work with creating a good brand of crypto within the industry. So there's, these initiatives like Stand with Crypto, that they're super important because we are solving real life use cases and industries with, I still need to go and sell to the CFO of a stadium or a local authority or a transport authority, right? So we need that level of credibility.
Yeah, no, exactly. I feel that people who came to the startup part of the event was like, okay, almost by mistake end up there. That's very true. Yeah, I mean, let's hope that, like with all the work that we all combine are doing, there's a lot of projects, a lot of founders as well, trying to like make this name more well known. So hopefully, I think every year we're gonna get closer and closer for getting like mass adoption, at least mass awareness, right? Okay, so you guys been around since 2019. What was the milestones that you guys are like achieving this year, and then how do you see the project moving forward in, let's say, the next 2 to 5 years?
Great question. So this year is so busy. So we have 8 trials going on at the moment, which are a lot. And we are mainly deploying SalesStack in venues like concert arenas, stadiums, train stations, and high density stadiums, environments at city centers. We're also working in a very cool project that unfortunately I don't have the ability to talk about the owner of the project, but it's really cool. It's in Africa and it's to promote connectivity in schools. And we love that because it's linked to Adino as well. So it brings, it's the whole idea of incentivization. It's, how do I incentivize people to come and build this network? So we're super excited about that one as well. And yeah, so our core milestone now is to deliver these 8 trials. We're also doing a piece with volumetric video, which is super cool because, you go into a stadium and you want to transmit the video of the full player. So you have like so many cameras around and you need to find a way to transmit all of that data. So we do that. We're in a couple of research projects. So one project that we're trying to influence decentralization towards 6G architecture. So being able to, we're working with the big vendors, so Ericsson, Samsung, Nokia, so trying to influence their thinking and maybe they can bring it to standards and it can be more streamlined. So all of that is happening this year, which is great. We're also growing the team at a record pace, which it's a bit nerve-wracking, at least for me, when I see it. We've always been a very close-knit team, and now, passing the double numbers, which for, a lot of startups, when you get a cash injection from VCs, it's the first thing you do, right? But for us, it's been a slow pace until we got here. So that's that. And then next year, our objective is to obviously scale in the same area. So kind of like venues and looking at private networks and potentially doing a bit more data centers and how can we enable those compute facilities to be housing the networks of the future. And keep growing, keep spreading the message.
Keep hustling. You guys been for a long time, and long time for crypto years, I would say, right? Because for telco companies, it's not, but for crypto and everything, it's like you said, like people who started in crypto in 2017 call themselves OGs already, and I think that's kind of like it's almost funny. I started with crypto 2011, but then DePIN since 2020, so then people call it DePIN OGs, right from the beginning. It's been almost like 4 years. It's been a lot of work. We've been working like basically 7 days a week since then, but it's something that we're very excited about that. And there's a lot of work to be done, and it's okay. We like what we do. So where can people know more about Weaver Labs and what should they do to reach you guys out?
So we have an awesome marketing team that does a great job in keeping everyone posted on Telegram and Twitter. Obviously, our LinkedIn is more related to, our B2B customers, and you can see a lot of our engagement there as well. But I would say for the crypto community, it's, X and Telegram, the channels where the most conversation happen. We're super active there, so happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'll definitely link all the links in the description of this video or the podcast, anywhere you're listening to. Make sure to also go to DePINHub.io to subscribe to the newsletter, because we have a lot of cool things happening. We have the DePIN Revolution that's happening at the end of August, and the 24th and 25th of August, I think. But make sure to check it out, revolution.depinhub.io. And thanks so much for joining the podcast. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And I'll be for sure following close with everything you guys are doing. And next time I come to Lisbon or I go to London, yeah, let's meet up.
Hit me up. Yeah, absolutely.
Have a
Thank
good
you
one.
so much. It's been a
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.